people, this is your guy Force, and I welcome you all once again to my guitar lessons channel. This channel is solely for guitar lessons. This channel is created solely for guitar lessons, and I always say that subscribing and following this channel can really help you to learn the guitar by yourself at your comfort zone. So if today happens to be the first time you are watching the video on this channel, I kindly ask you to subscribe to this channel. You hit on the subscribe. After you hit on the notification bell, so that anytime I upload a new lesson, a new video, YouTube will message you, YouTube will alert you, and then you'll be the first person to watch the lesson. So let's move on to today's lesson. In today's video, we are going to talk about 5 other basic terms that every guitarist must know. Last week we got to know about 5 terms, and today we are going to learn another 5 terms. And I really want you to take these ones very serious, because as we move on with the lessons, I will be using these terms, and I want you to understand these terms so that when I apply them in the lessons, it will be easy for you to understand what I mean. I always say that in learning the guitar has its own language, and as a guitarist, you must know the language. So today we are going to talk about 5 terms, and the first one that we will talk about the bending. We talk about bending. We will talk about hammer on or hammering on. We will talk about tone, semitone, and then tempo. We are going to talk about tone, semitone, bending, hammering on, and then tempo. These terms are very, very important as we move on with the lessons, especially when we are going to learn chords and other lessons. You must know these terms, and you must know what they mean. So the first one that we will talk about, that is the bending. When we talk of bending in guitar, this is what it means. For instance, if you are playing a note like this do, this do, this do, and this your do. So if you want to play a note, if you want to play something, a single note on the guitar, and then you pull it up, this is what we call the bending. And if you are learning this, don't be afraid that you are going to have a broken string. There is no way that the strings are going to be broken. So let me use the first finger so that you can see it clearly. I'm playing on the G string, the do on the or the C on the G string. This is do. So if I want to bend it, this one is somehow similar to the sustain. That is this one. That is the vibrator. See, this one you just go up and down, but the bending you pull it up. This is what we call the bending. And in the bending, you can bend up, you can bend down. This is the bending up. This is the bending down. The same string. You pull it up, that is the bending. You bend the string up, and then you can go down. So when we talk of bending in learning the guitar, this is what it means. And the next term that we will talk about is the hammering on or the hammer on. The hammering on, for instance, you want to play do, re, do, re, do. This is what we call the hammering on. Yes, the same, the re, instead of going do, re, you go like this. So you play the first note, and your second note, instead of going direct, you just hammer your finger on it. So you can go, you can hammer like this, or it depends on what you are using the the term, or you are using the hammering to do. It depends on what you are using it to do. So this is what the hammering is about, and this is what the bending is about. So the next term that we are going to talk about, these ones are very, very serious. We are going to talk about a tone and a semitone. And this one, I really want you to know the difference when you talk about a tone in music, and then when you talk about a semitone in music. Now, these two terms are all talking about distances on the guitar. These two terms are all talking about distances that we have on the guitar. And I want you to know what makes the difference. When we talk, first I'll start with a semitone. When we talk of a semitone, we are just referring to a step ahead of a note, or a step behind a note. That is one single step. It means when we talk of steps, it means we are referring to the frets on the guitar. So one single fret is a semitone. So let me play, or let me show you on the board. For instance, I'm using the high E string. This is my high E string, and I'm taking a note like G. The G on the high E string. This is my notes, my G note on the high E string. So if I move forward from the G to the next fret, a step ahead, this is a semitone. So G, a step ahead of G, is a semitone above G. It's a semitone above G. So from G, the next step, this is G sharp, and the G sharp becomes a semitone for G. This is your G. A step ahead is a semitone for G. So this semitone, we call it the semitone above, because it's in front. And then the same G, when you go back a step backwards, which is B flat, B flat, which is G flat, is also a semitone, but a semitone below G. So have you seen the difference? A step ahead of the G notes is a semitone of the G above. A semitone above the G notes. And then a step backwards of the G notes, which is G flat, becomes a semitone of the G below. A semitone below, a semitone above. So when you talk of a semitone in music or on the guitar, we are just referring to a step ahead of a note. That becomes a semitone. So now, what we just did here, when you move to any note on the string, is the same procedure. When you are playing like C, or this C, or this C, or F, let's take this C, or this C, let's take this C. This is your C. A step ahead, which is C sharp, is a semitone of the note C. A semitone. That is a semitone above. And when you go back, which is F sharp, yes, when you go back, where C flat becomes a semitone below. So in front is a semitone above, at the back is a semitone below. So when you talk of semitone, this is what it means. Now, the next term we'll talk about is a tone. When you talk of a tone, the only difference is that a tone is made up of two semitones. Two semitones makes a tone. So in simply we are referring to two steps ahead becomes a tone. Two steps ahead becomes a tone. And the two steps are made up of two semitones. So two semitones makes a tone. But a semitone is just a step ahead. For instance, we are using the same high E string, and the G note on the high E string. We have our G, this is our G, and then we are saying that a tone is made up of 2 semitones or 2 steps. So this is our G. We move forward to G sharp and then to A. So from G to A, from G note to A note is a tone, because you moved 2 steps. So G to A is a tone, G to G sharp is a semitone. That is, all these ones are above, a tone above. G to A is a tone above, and then G to F is a tone below. G, and then you go to G flat, from G flat you go to A. So from G to F, so from G to F is a semitone, is a tone below G, is a tone, because we moved 2 steps, that is 2 semitones. So I repeat again, and then you get the difference. When you talk of a tone, when you talk of a semitone is just a single step ahead of a note. For instance, we have our G. From G, a single step ahead is G sharp, and that becomes a semitone for G. And this semitone is above because it's in front. Remember I said we can have a semitone in front, we can have a semitone at the back, and we can have a tone in front, we can have a tone at the back. So the semitone from G is G sharp. So the G sharp becomes a semitone for note G. And then when you are taking the semitone backwards, from G to G flat become a semitone below G, a semitone below the G note, and if it's in front, it's a semitone above the G note. So when we talk of semitone, this is what we mean. And a tone is made up of 2 semitones. Remember, initially I said these 2 terms are all talking about distances on the guitar, but the only difference is that a semitone is just 1 step, it's just 1 distance, and then a tone is 2 distance. So a tone is made up of 2 semitones, meaning 2 steps. So for instance, we have our G. From G to A, from your G note to A becomes a tone of G above, becomes a tone above the G note. And then when you are taking the tone at the back of the G note, we will get our tone on the F, because this is our G. Then we move 1 2 1 2 is a tone, and that tone is being, we got that tone on the F. And then a tone above the G is 1, from G 1 2, that is A. From G to A is a tone for G note, and then that is above. And then from G to F is a tone of the G note, that is below. And if it's a semitone, from G to G sharp, the G sharp becomes a semitone for the note G. And then from G, that is above, and then from G to G flat becomes a semitone for the note G. So these are the differences between the tone and a semitone. And what we just did on the G string, when you move to any string or any note on the guitar, is the same thing. Any note on the guitar, a step ahead of that note is a semitone. That is, a step ahead of that note is a semitone above, and a step at the back of that note is a semitone below. Now we want to look at how to get a semitone in an open note. In an open note. When we have an open note like this, remember we have the strings have their notes, their names. We have E, B, G, D, A, and then another E. And these notes or these names of the strings are also notes. So when you want to find the semitone for an open note and a tone for an open note, this is how that 1, 2 goes. For instance, if you have E, this is your high E string, and it's a note, it's E note. So if you want to find a semitone for this E note, it's just the first fret adjacent the knot. This is your knot. This is your knot. This is your knot. And then the first fret after the knot becomes the semitone for note E, the open note E. This is E. And then your semitone becomes the first fret just after the knot. The first fret after the knot becomes your semitone. So this is the semitone for the note E open. I'm saying the note E open because we have E here. This is E, but this one is not open, and we have this E. So we are looking at how to find the semitone using the open note of E. These are open notes of E, and the semitone is just the first fret adjacent the knot. We know these are knots, and the first fret on the same string becomes your semitone. Now, if you want to find the tone of the open note E, is the second fret of the same string becomes your note. Becomes your note of the open E note. It becomes your tone for the open E note. I repeat this one again. Now, what we did here was a note that we pressed on the string. Now we want to look at how to find a semitone and a tone in an open note. And the open notes are the names of the strings. That is E, E, high E, we have the B, we have the G, we have the D, we have the A, we have another E. That is a low E. And all these names of the strings are also notes. And we want to find the notes, the semitones, and the tones for these notes. So we are taking the high E string. That is the E note, without any hand on the fret or on the string. That is the E note. So if you want to find the semitone for this note, is the first fret adjacent the knot. The first fret adjacent the knot becomes the semitone for the high E note, the open note. This is a semitone, because we said semitone is just one step ahead. Now, if you want to know the tone for this note, is the second fret adjacent the knot on the same string. That becomes your note on the open E string. Very good. Now, this procedure applies to all the strings. All the strings, when you want to play open notes on all the strings, it's the same procedure. So this is what we mean when we talk about a tone and a semitone. A semitone is just a one step ahead or a one step behind, and then a tone is made up of two semitones, that is 2 steps ahead or 2 steps behind. Now, the next term that we are going to talk about is tempo. Tempo is very, very, very important for every musician, not only guitarist. Even if you are a vocalist, tempo is very important. If you are a keyboardist, tempo is very important. If you are a drummer, tempo is very, very important. So when you talk of tempo, we are just referring to the speed at which you play. The speed at which you play, or the speed at which you sing, that is if you are a vocalist. So tempo is basically about the speed at which you play the guitar. So it's talking about timing or time. And this is one thing that most guitarists always have problem with, including well advanced guitarists. So today I want you to know that tempo is very important. And if you want to practice tempo very, very well, I will kindly ask you to download an application on Google Play Store, Market, or your iPhone called the Metronome. Metronome is very, very good that you can use to practice your tempo, how to maintain a specific tempo. For instance, this major scales that we did. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, do, ti, la, so, fa, mi, re, do. When you look at this tempo and then this tempo, that is the speed at which I was traveling, I was playing the scale, it's very slow. And then we can have this same scale with this tempo. So this is what we are talking about when we talk of tempo. It's about the speed at which that you play, or the time or the timing of your play, how you are playing, how you time yourself when you are playing the guitar. It's very, very important. If you have problem with tempo, you always struggle to play for vocalists, especially when the person is singing with a specific tempo and you are playing with a different tempo. So that is that on tempo. Make sure you download the Metronome and then you practice timing with that app. It's very, very important. I'll have a lesson on how to use the Metronome. I'll have a separate lesson on how to use the Metronome. But for now, I kindly ask you to download the app and then you go through and then you get to know how you can do it by yourself as you wait for me to come out with a separate lesson on how to use the Metronome. It's very, very important. So tempo is about the speed at which that you play. Yes, the tempo, they are not the same. So work on your tempo, use the Metronome, and if you are a well advanced guitarist, don't take tempo for granted. It's very, very important. It's very, very important. So these are the things that I want us to look out for today. The first one is the bending. That is where you pull. This is what the bending, when you talk of bending, this is what we are talking about. And then we spoke about the hammering. That is where you hammer. You hammer on the string. And then we spoke about the tone and the semitone. We said a semitone is just a step ahead of a note. That is a semitone above, or a step behind the note. That is a semitone below. And then we spoke about a tone. A tone is just made up of two semitones. That is two steps ahead of a note. That is a tone above, and then two steps behind a note. That is a tone below. And then we also looked at the tempo. When you talk of tempo on the guitar or in music, we are just referring to the speed at which that you play. These are the terms that I want us to look for today. I kindly ask you to practice them and then make sure that you know them. And one more time, don't forget to download the Metronome and then practice your tempo with that application. Thank you for watching this video. If today happens to be the first time that you are watching the video here, again, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. You subscribe, you hit the bell, and then if you've not watched my previous lessons, I kindly ask you to go to the description below this video, and then you get the link to watch all my previous lessons. Also, share this link to your friends. Share to anybody that you think he or she might be interested in learning the guitar. Thank you very much. Have a nice weekend. Goodbye.